Okay, it is the top of the hour, so let's begin. Welcome everyone to Fluid Vessels 14. My name is Eli McLaren. I am the director of the Montreal International Poetry Prize. Fluid Vessels is the reading series of the Montreal Prize, and our 14th session today, our third this year, features more of the finalists from the 2024 competition. We're very excited to be publishing their poems in our next anthology, the Montreal Poetry Prize Anthology 2024, which will, well, it's at the printer now and it will be in our hands next week. So we're very excited about this moment. Our program today is an international one featuring Wesley Rothman, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Owen Torrey, who is Canadian, but joins us from Providence, Rhode Island, and Sheryl White, who is speaking today from Boston. In my mind, this is the anti-tariff reading, since we have friends and colleagues on both sides of the Canada-US border today. So thank you for continuing our friendship through poetry as usual, while the storms of politics rage all around us. The host of today's session is none other than our operations manager at the Montreal International Poetry Prize, Martin Breul. I'll turn things over to Martin in just a moment. But in getting started, let me remind everyone that our session today, as usual, will last for about an hour. I'll remind everyone of the courtesy of muting your microphones during the introductions and the readings. At the end of the third reading, we'll have a few minutes for questions and comments from the audience. Remember, please, to keep your questions brief and concise so we can keep our focus on our three guests who are the reason that we are here this afternoon. It's wonderful to see already 39 participants on the call. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm going to turn things over to Martin.
Thank you so much, Eli. It's such a pleasure to be here and host the final session of Fluid Vessels for this year to present to our audience yet another three finalists of last year's competition. And I would like to take this opportunity to also thank everyone who has worked hard on the prize behind the scenes in the committee, our honored jury, but also all the people who have supported us by generously sending us their work and helping the Montreal Prize to exist for yet another round, which we will soon celebrate with our, as is per usual, with our printed anthology, which I can't wait to hold in my hand and to send out to everyone who has contributed to it. Our first reader for today is Wesley Rothman. Wesley Rothman's poetry is a persistent dialogue in which ever-shifting selves and others are revealed or revealed anew through their shared and distinct histories, environments, traditions, landscapes, and emotions. Wesley is the author of Subwoofer, published in 2017, winner of the New Issues Poetry and Prose Editor's Choice Award. His poems have been featured in the Kenyon Review, the Slowdown, Southern Humanities Review, Verse Daily, the Golden Shovel Anthology, and elsewhere. Recipient of fellowships from Sewanee and the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, he teaches at Howard University. His second book manuscript, Wanted, has been a runner-up for the Vanderbilt University Literary Prize, a finalist for the Ellis James Award, and complemented by the Princeton Series of Contemporary Poets. Wesley's finalist for the Montreal International Poetry Prize 2024 is Coyote on My Shoulder, in which a speaker explores their connection to their interlocutor by thinking of them as a coyote and by thinking of themselves as a meerkat. The poem acknowledges different versions of this encounter, while the speaker remains contemplative, indecisive, yet drawn to the coyote figure. They appear in different shapes, are not always their animal. On the other hand, the you, the poem's other, if we understand them as that, remains a coyote, but reveals different truths about themselves in every version. The coyote is a teacher, a guide, a figure of wisdom, but also an elusive figure whose proximity or even affection could spell danger, much like that of a capable poet. Wesley, thank you for your piece. Thank you for joining us today. The word is yours.
Thank you so much, Martin. Wow, that it's always amazing to hear other people interpret and talk and respond and work with the work. I feel like so often we make it and we maybe read it with people, but we don't always hear, well, I don't always hear it from other people. And so that's always really thrilling. Also, before we before we all were here together just 7, 8 minutes ago, some of us were talking about how we got to poetry, and my senior English high school teacher is here, who was like really influential in all of this. So, Greg, you're here. Thank you. And then another dear friend is also here who has something to do with a coyote poem. So this is really cool. I just want to share a couple poems from the new manuscript that is looking for a home. Um, and this is the first poem from it. It's called Go Back into Yourself. I looked for myself, and there was no world, no continent in me, not even a province, no estate, no small village rebuilt after so many wars. It's one road running with sun, still hardly worn after a century. The wild fields that lap the edges of tilled earth, squaring the town, are where I want to love you. The light wind, almost warm, how I want to leave you. All I have found in me is one large grain of wheat, lost in a ceramic jar, corked in the narrow cupboard of a rough stone cottage in that village, hushed among the farm fields and tree rows, rugged green land. I turn from the expanses to the tight grain in my palm, hold it out for you. All right. This is Coyote on My Shoulder, which was very excitingly selected. Coyote. It's the poem. Listen to the story. Coyote on my shoulder. On the veranda overlooking a golf course sunken in dark, you described yourself as a coyote on my shoulder. You had never spotted one before, still haven't, besides Wile E, or a chance showdown through a phone screen, a stare down through time. When the scavenger was recorded jaunting through suburban San Diego and the moment of your watching. By the course, somebody asked everyone to say instinctively what our favorite animals are, suggested that they reveal how we believe we are perceived. Among the mosquitoes, somebody else reminded us of the resemblances between dogs and their humans. And it always is a showdown, or is it a stare down? They say a stare down has to do with pressure, not giving in. They say a showdown comes with finality, like facing a big boss. A standoff tips toward bodies colliding, toward raging mouths and wild teeth, contusions, tearing. I said quick like, meerkat. Somebody looked me in the face, waved her eyes up, down, up me, and grinned. I'm shaped and skittish like them, meerkats. She was right. In one version of this, I forget my animal, and you visit me in wide daylight, spectral, not miniature like those cartoon consciences, nor your human dimensions. You are just a whole ass coyote, slender, untamed fur, boss-eyed. When you visit, since my shoulders are so broad, you crescent my neck, hinds on one side, fores the other. You see as I do, or I see as you do. Your snout siding my temple, belly warming my nape. These visits come when I can't keep something to myself. As coyotes do, you say little, think much. I show you the scraps of my decisions, hold out the rabbit thigh of my day, and you teach me that not everything must be devoured. I keep needing reminders of this. You pant a sentence or two, you leap to the ground and jaunt, how else, into vapor and dusk. In another version, I am meerkat, and you have me between your paws, getting the last scraps of meat off my bones with your tiny front teeth. And I'll end with one last poem. The new book, I haven't gotten to these parts yet, but the new book, Wanted, is largely, as I've been calling it, a communion with James Baldwin. And so I would say about half of the book is sort of in direct dialogue with Baldwin, reflecting on um, things he wrote, investigating things of his life, imagining these sort of impossible encounters with Baldwin across time. Uh, Part of the like concept of the book, aside from me being a massive Baldwin fan and him profoundly impacting my life. I was born about 6 months before he died. And so there's this concept of like the 6 months that we sort of shared Earth or this plane or whatever is sort of floating through a lot of the work. And so there is this poem near the end of the book um, that revisits and then reimagines his villa in the south of France, where he spent the majority of like the last couple decades of his life. And unfortunately, several years ago, despite preservation efforts, it was purchased by a developing company, torn down quite literally with a bulldozer, and doesn't exist anymore. So, but there's pictures and documentaries that were filmed in part there, and a lot of great things to experience. So this is at his villa in Saint Paul de Vence. This poem is called "Within Your Gates." The excavator will return every bucket of earth until there is hillside again. Each wall will untumble, and crossbeams will rise whole again. Terracotta will recrown your villa. The gamut of greens will detonate in thick fronds, thickets, wildgrass, vines gripping whole walls, weaving the eaves. When winding back time, it's easy to get carried away, wind people back to life, to when the cancer hadn't seeped, hadn't mutated from the unknown in the stomach. Not even a poem can bring you back, but it can rebuild the blooms and geometry, the wicker chairs, the fat urns that line the stone pathway curving through stiff Italian cypresses, green as night, and the slatted pergola of roughly stripped branches wrist thick, your welcome table submerged in the garden. The thousand lime sheaths of New England flax, yuccas and yuccas, a row of sago palms, each bulbing pups from its stalks. The tangerine trumpets will again wrap their tendrils around the corner of the house, around the kitchen window, around the water spigot. 1 hectare of blush rose bushes will burst from the beyond, and the pygmy date palm will rise from its side, your lush Lazarus. You would pluck an orange from the full citrus green, have it, hollow the juice, but you do not return. Someone else's hand must loose the fruit. Only the untamed grasses grow back, the raucous leaves, and that arrogantly magenta bougainvillea. The greens spill into each other, fill your writing room, throw open the shutters and scale the inside of your chimney. What was torn from this place blooms back a fortress, and inside the stone and plaster, inside the crowded vines, your final breaths suspend. You hold the leaves together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wesley. That was powerful. And thank you for introducing us to your project about the imaginary encounters with James Baldwin. I hope it finds a home and its way to all our bookshelves soon enough. All right,
Thank
on to
you.
our second reader for the night, Owen Torrey. Owen Torrey's poems are detailed visions of encounters, moments, memories, places, and artworks that push us beyond their carefully crafted surfaces to engage deeper questions, such as what it is that we look at or listen to when we believe we see or hear, or of course, read. Owen is a writer from Toronto. His work can be found in the Literary Review of Canada, Canadian Literature, Geist, Maisonneuve, Gulf Coast, Columbia Journal, Best Canadian Poetry, the Malahat Review, and elsewhere. He has been nominated for the CBC Radio Canada Poetry Prize and was awarded the Roger Conant Hedge Prize for Lyric Poetry. His debut collection, Unseasonal, is forthcoming from Vehicle Press, and his chapbook, Over Blue, is out now with Anstruther Press. Owen lives in Providence, Rhode Island, where he is an MFA candidate in poetry at Brown University. Owen's A Familiar Story was a finalist for the Montreal International Poetry Prize 2024. This poem appears to be dominated by the duality between a speaker and a boy. A coming-of-age story is unfolding, but the growth is not easily pinpointed. Does the speaker learn from the boy? Is the boy a fiction or a reflection? As the speaker loses sight of the boy and finds him again, does he reconnect or merely finalize a loss? Observing the boy identify diverse geographies from a distance, first through printed works and then through screens, he becomes an anchor, a conduit, a lighthouse to the speaker in a rapidly changing world. Yet his inability to complete his work unsettles the boy and his audience alike, prompting us as readers to confront the question of who we become when we grow. Owen, thank you for your poem and welcome.
Thank you so much, Martin. That was such a beautiful introduction. And yeah, thank you to everyone at the Montreal Poetry Prize, Eli and Matilda. Yeah, I'm so excited to be part of this reading and to be reading with you, Wesley and Sheryl. I loved your shortlisted poems. And Wesley, that was such a beautiful reading with some really cute guest stars. And I'm really excited, Sheryl, to hear your reading next. Yeah, so I'll just get into it. I don't know where people are calling in from, but here where I am on like the East Coast in Providence, it's like that strange part of the year where it's like sort of spring, but mostly still not. Like we had some snow here yesterday. And so I wanted to read a poem that's sort of like situated at that strange seasonal juncture. And it's called Unseasonal. There's always a cold day in April. This is that day. Last year's was spent at a party with wine, leeks, nothing that was not spring. It was at Jack's fifth floor walk-up with windows that never quite closed. Light along the emptied glasses, air clear and all around us. Mid-pour, Jack says he started grounding, a word for walking in a field to feel it. He says you wouldn't believe what the earth gives you when you just ask. I can feel that day running beneath me. It is thin ice underfoot. This is how we touch the past, keep it flat and broken, far below. I won't speak now of then, its end, heading down to the street, now heaped in snow. As soon as we saw it, we knew it would come, as we know a dream to be a dream when it arrives again. Today there is no snow, just cold. I am kneeling alone in the dark yard, thumbing the few mint sprigs I had planted foolishly. They were getting ahead of themselves. Things always are. So that poem is a bit of an older one, and it's from my forthcoming book with Vehicle Press, which is also called Unseasonal. And I would say a lot of the poems in that book are sort of about a similar sense of seasonal instability and how that maps onto other kinds of instability of feeling, of memory, of relationship. But I wanted to share also today some more recent poems. So this next one is a newer one. I moved here to Providence from Toronto last fall, and since I've gotten here, I found I've been like writing more about Toronto and the city where I grew up. And so this next poem talks about these posters that I would see all the time, like growing up in Toronto, that I was always very like mystified by. So maybe if for those of you who spent time in Toronto or lived there, you might recognize them too. The poem is called Y2K. Who here was alive then, when we had all those cameras that took photos in black and white, except for one color? You could choose. Select blue and anything that was that would return to its hue. The sky, your dress, those posters posted on street poles in the background. Zooming in now, they reveal themselves to be advertisements for a screening of some silent vampire B-movie scored to the album Kid A. It's a reference that would seem to date this and us back to a particular time in Toronto in the 21st century when that sign was everywhere on the streets, stapled posts scabbed over with them. And there was a room not far where we never went where the film played. And there was a review of that album that began with, I had never even seen a shooting star before. And that was the year before we were born, when everyone worried the zeros in the year would break the year open. Technology is what becomes obsolete, vanishes, and the sentence is a technology, I say with you now, both of us using the same machinery. When nothing broke, nothing changed. There was no disaster, just a century of selective color, silent films allowed, and irony and beauty, or what we saw of it. We did like a dog who sees the blue headlights coming, thinks, my first shooting star. Um, that poem was like really hugely like helped by my friends who I talk about with poems. They really helped me kind of like find a way into writing it. And so I wanted to read a poem that is about friendship, without which I don't know if the poems would ever like get done. So this poem is called SZ. Concerned with form, we worked on farms, where small shapes became the ones recognizable in stores. Tomatoes were white for weeks before anything resembling red. The appearance of blood in the sculptor's childhood, those were words I read aloud at night in bed to Alice in the attic of her house. We drove home with the radio on static. We slept with our books in our hands. When hers came near me in my dream, it would take the form of the novel. It never was. But there were some objects that stayed the same shape each day: mirror, knife, latch, dirt, dress, hutch, swing. A list that reminds me little of that time now, except for dresses, of which she had several, and that mirror we found off the highway, which, seeing her across the room in, would make my heart swell the size of a buyable plum. The dirt we dug for hours and the dirt we dug for art, her art, there was no difference. For days I filmed her through the mirror as she moved back and forth over its dark mounds and masks, even eating some. Her hair, which would fall out, had not then. I love you, I read, touching her skin, which was the only part I could. Um, This next poem has an Icelandic name that I've practiced pronouncing a lot, but I apologize to any Icelandic speakers calling in if I get it a little bit wrong. Jökull Sarlon. For a while, what I wanted was at once most clear and most obscure to me, like my recurring dream of the window I was asked to clean. Out on the other side, I saw several fences, horses, slim apple trees. I could hear the sound of words piped in overhead, like a voiceover played in a foreign film, describing how some of the visible apples had been made much like any other apples, without hands, while others had been hung there by a local craftsman out of wax as proof of his craft. His proof I saw was striking when I finished my work and walked beneath the trees. I could not tell which fruits corresponded to my need for sugar, coolness, skin, seed, which were only tricks. Just yesterday, I described this dream to my one friend who cares about hearing about people's dreams. We sat on his porch with no screen. When I finished, he paused before telling me the story about the time that a woman in Iceland, on a tour of a volcano, wandered off alone, only to return and join the search for a missing woman flashlight shining through the fog, not yet recognizing herself as the description of the person described as lost. I just have two more poems that I'll share, and yeah, thank you again, everyone, for being a part of this today. This poem is called Life on Mars. I don't have my heart for long, so let me have it while it's here. That it becomes the it from the sentence, it's alive. I'm at the foot of a monster being brought into being with large electric ropes. I'm at a loss. I'm at the drive-in theater buying unorthodox popcorn, the light in my hair through the screen as the monster's heart made of styrofoam beats, the shortest distance between two definitions of the same word. The swan's heart is in the swan, the stars are in the sky. I don't have my heart to tell you how elsewhere I thought the shapes the stars could make in the night would make things here patterned clearer, designed, form for a reason that was life or like it. There are great Danish chairs you can sit on from the mid-century on Earth. They had their hearts taken. You are ergonomically visible to me. Hello, we have so much in common. And yeah, just one final poem to share. It's from the closing section of Unseasonal, and it's also in my chapbook Overblue, which is out now with Anstruther Press. Blue. September still and still more than warm, enough to be out on the porch where I am, when through the half-open door a corner of canvas appears with a skateboard beneath it. Ada comes after, pulling her painting the size of her. She sits next to me, the canvas opposite. I'm presenting it in class today, she says, but don't want to. What is there to say? We consider the problem. Before me, what was once blue now becomes a shape in the shape of sheets on a bed, a faint suggestion of walls. In her room last night, we sat sipping ice from plastic cups, the only light a floor lamp throwing diffuse gasps up at us. We leaned in closer. We were trying to decipher steps on a bottle of hair dye bought from the CVS on Mass Ave. The dye had called itself Midnight Stroll. It was all wrong, we agreed. Its blue more like light at the top of day, the bottom of a pool. I watched Ada turn to her raised window, the night outside dark enough to make a mirror from the glass, reflecting her face out into the neighbor's elm. She applied the dye, hands sliding down through each strand, each branch. It should all be blue, she said. I showed her where she missed. My hand's still stained around the edges this morning. I'm rubbing at it as Ada says, I was thinking about interior and exterior space, how we orient ourselves inside one to the other. Inside her car last year, the window was open wide. We could hear the ice gashes whistling behind us as the car slipped northwards and home. I sat watching March, its light spilled, staining highway shoulders, her neck, my hand, above the sky the color of what I now know to be midnight stroll, neighbor's elm. At the border, the guard stood impatiently beneath this blue and asked us, relationship? To our answer, friends, he insisted, partners? Why, he asked, would you drive a friend to Canada? It was impossible for him to imagine. In the painting, there is no division between object or form. Certain moments of structure surface only to fail to give shape to blue. The blue that is the bed is also the hair. The air is the hand. The bed is the elm. The hair is the hair, and the air is getting colder by the time I help Ada maneuver the painting, the skateboard, down each step. The color applied, so thick it's heavy. What can you say about it? What can you say about such blue? Reaching a hand to grab the canvas, my fingers brush beside her braid as the blue of us slides between each other like water on a map. Tell your class this, Ada. I love you, midnight stroll, because you are nothing like your name and everywhere, in every person who has walked through CVS board, not knowing they did not need you because you were already inside them. I love you. I do. Nothing else to say, just this. I love you so much, I would drive you to Canada. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, what an ending. Thank you so much, Owen. That was great. You certainly reminded me that I haven't supported your Honor Toronto publisher, Anstruter Press, enough. And I'm very glad also that you joined the roster of Montreal-based publisher Vehicle Press with your forthcoming collection. Our final reader for tonight is Sheryl L. White, a writer and artist whose work repeatedly explores how time and memory register in the poetics of human perception and the poetics of nature. Sheryl is a writer and artist living in Boston and has been published in Solstice Literary Magazine, Great Lakes Review, the Roanoke Review, the Boston Globe, Arnoldia, Woven Tale Press Journal, Burning Word Literary Journal, and the Comstock Review, among others. She is a recipient of a Massachusetts Cultural Council Poetry Finalist Grant and was twice selected for the Mayor of Boston Poetry Program. Her work has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. Her chapbook, Sky Gone, was published by Finishing Line Press in 2020. Numbered Exercise in Eulogy is Sheryl's finalist of the Montreal International Poetry Prize 2024. The poem's title invokes the genre of eulogy, and by positioning it as something that can be exercised and structured numerically, the title also indicates how the piece is pushing against our conventional understandings of this genre. The piece appears to be a reversed reflection on the speaker's life, an exercise not so much in mourning as grief for the loss of something or coming to term or someone external, but in self-mourning, in grappling with the irreversibility of time and in coming to terms with the frustrating singularity of our lives. Ultimately, in the poem's final line, this limit emerges as the potential for a new beginning. Welcome, Sheryl. Thank you for your poem and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Martin, for such a flattering introduction. Like Wesley said, it's strange to hear my work and me talked about in words that make me feel like I'm a real life poet, which is very exciting. Thanks also to Eli, Matilda, and the Montreal International Poetry Prize, and fellow wonderful poets and readers, Owen and Wesley. And a huge thanks to all the people who are here and have joined us. I'd like to start with several poems from a manuscript I've worked on for 10 years, so it's very close to my heart. It is currently out for publication possibilities. Its simple title is Arc, as in Noah's, and in 80 short poems, it follows an arc, as in a curve from one point to another, of animals that owe their fate to us. I'll read several poems that come from the 6 sections, which follow a trajectory from the taken for granted to the taken. Most of these poems were previously published in various journals, some under different titles. The first poem, sorry, we didn't turn off the phone. The first poem considers the only person I included on my arc. Zara, the wife. Bone built, bone thin, bone weary wife, cleaner of chattel, good store, turner of cheek, into this shower, torrent, torment, harbinger of flood, this stuff that washes dreams, drowns infants, into all crowds you come striding, summoning strength, sorting couples, vanquishing lust, ordering dinners, paying bills, gathering coats, furs, wools, down, solving arguments, allaying fears, cleaning assorted bins and mangers, wicking lamps, wiping noses with ease and patience, saving more than 2 seeds dry in a hidden seam of your holy linen apron. Muskrats. It was you two, slick-furred, love-damped noses from the tunnel under the pond. Did you hear some call? Was there a trumpet or bullhorn? A lure of mussels, and rushes. One of you had to know there would be questions. Did you leave kits naked as herrings wrapped in your cattail lodge? Rat-eyed, bullet-tailed, swimmers, high-dried on a cattail lodge. In the cubit of midden, cubit of cypress, drowning day by day in chaff of beast breath, swamp of beaver, goose, fox, endless doomed teams of two, waiting for a chance to jump ship. Armadillos. If Noah was a poet, or something as sacred, bishop, perhaps, he'd pen you in, send solemn words from his lips to you, there in constant heave of deck, claw and nose to the wind, night star trails, filaments of fire, shoot glares up through dark prayers. Anyone left to see them save you? Proclamations of departure, arrival, holding patterns are writ, annihilation announced, calm becalmed, calm before. Millennia away, floods feature apocryphal, in retrospect after begats begat. You have a hunch, seriously, head down, tail down, watch your back. Head Down, Tail Down is an excerpt from The Armadillo by Elizabeth Bishop, 1957. Bats within the ark. Heads up in flight, heads down in bare spaces under night, in open spaces, in gray dawn or dim noon, fog-fed confusion of day after day, shunned in your little wings for your little teeth, keen eyes, dark's flight, low-furred travel without heard sound. Sweet pollinators or blood feeders, wide of winged bones, long of fingers, true of ear, echo makers. Will you fail to roost or endure the voyage, bow down, feet tuned, turned up to the deck, or soar skybound in storm twilight, day after night after night, an ark's finite universe, not insect-free, no sanctioned prey, no belfry in sight, only Noah. Big cat. Like killing the warthog, the scream, limp life, like lying in some scrub stubble of sand, like radio birds dancing off into cicada winds when you shook that heavy head. Like these, it is not. No cub to claw, paw rough gentle at noon, passing the misses, circling callous-kneed, scab-toed. Now musk of gazelle, monkey, eland rise in sawdust horizons, like a mirage, or true wound fester loud just the other side of board, nail, above that same swell, wave, sea rise that washed away your crown. Whales beside the ark. Right there, sperm and humpback, killer marking ark-bound predators. Beluga, blue, bowhead, bottlenose, beaked, an endless riot of blowholes, breaches, gray, fin, pilot, mink, every right. Something that magic, then gone into tight corset of bone, oil to light the world, sent to entice humanity, gone like countless dead flora, fauna drifting onto ocean floor. At world's end, a dolphin flies seaside beside the wooden hull. Does she wonder? If I accompany this traveling show from earth to paradise, will I be free to dance or be there a moment, then gone? And passenger pigeons. Emerald-hued, soft-winged, your massed flight pattern dark like gales of angels swooning. Thick-roosted, sky blackeners, wind-nested, progeny begot in an endless web of leaves under cover of cloud. Givers of food, small roast of skin and flesh, sport for the meek, target in the final book, numbered accession for a coming dearth of belief. You are two, safe in the storm. You'll be 10 after 40, 40 within a blink, 40 million until the end of time, written unless the tide turns and the boat capsizes in an oily brown surf. The next poem I'll read is Numbered Exercise in Eulogy, which was the finalist for the Montreal Prize. And as many poems do, it came out of grief and then became something more universal in an examination of years leading away from that grief. I imagine that most of our audience today may not know that the criterion for entering the Montreal International Poetry Prize was to write one poem no longer than 40 lines. And here was this poem I had already written, just waiting to be shared. Numbered exercise and eulogy. I will write 39 lines, longer than I have left in this preponderance of no time, no thought but that one, that prologue to all sunsets I have gathered into, light left lying beside headstones that mark time, time again. Now I will write 33 lines, a shorter morning run, quieter than feathers that pass on the other side of glass. Silent ghosts like dust settling on Launay crusts, shadows on clear days. My clearest day was that one. You remember, a celebration of snow, brief grace found in a cemetery tucked on a hill purpled with violets, beside some other memory, some other name, not one spoken in books, not any name screeded under a marble willow bough, no. I will write 24 more, slide each line by your eyes, along with 23, 22, the number plumbed until it sinks into the past and 21 becomes the mistress, an age of attainment, majority, legal limits revenged on each new generation to keep up, impose their own limit on you, on me, on time's limitation. Well, on they go, attained, legal, certified. Still, you sit unresponsive, deaf to the last lines of your own history. Now 15, once again 14, while this untenable speed backwards stuns until I crawl out, backwards, aged shell back into fresh skin and bones. No longer a need for plot, grave, urn. Long enough and I will become one with the mother, father, egg, sperm, cells, so tiny, no given can match simple need, love, even love, abstract homilies set down when sevens were created unequal, fraught with burdens of age and animal, tree, rock, war, and its elusive counter. Each has its day, its line in the book, its own vein to feed on, succor when time runs out, clot when sounds cease. All the world falls dark. Remember what began long ago? Then I will write. This next poem is an anaphora poem, which uses a repeating word throughout. In this poem are a spouse, sister, and friend, and they are all here today. From the Book of Common Prayer for Virginia. Because early light changes, sheens wall and floor, because under covers you breathe, because a rasp and cruel thing throws itself on the mercy of your lungs, because pillows flood the floor, bed, all things are feathered, because we sink soft, cushioned, no expectations, because there is no greater instruction, because Sister Mary holds her vigil like a hand, because we pull chairs knee to knee, spouse, sister, friend. We read Donne, Rilke, untranslated Neruda, because its romance lilts in Jean's mouth, an unrestrained Latin chant, benediction, eulogy, because it is what a priest does when he does nothing but parse, sing a melodic dead language, sing something to earth, something to ashes. Because now your every gasp is a hard seed born to brown dust. Because your breath is a changeling, one I wait on. Because I am sent away to your kitchen to hunt for silver spoons, painted cups for tea, berries, lemons. Because I go, because I return. Because your shadow is sated, quiet, flees. Because your body lies with two roses, long-stemmed, white, a hearse comes. Because the front door is seldom used, because its bull's eye glass casks dusk's hint of sun on a worn-planked, swallow-winged floor where you walked for 30 years. Because under cover you escaped, because this is new, because it is now late, light changes. As a visual artist for many years, I frequently find myself in more than one world at the same time. This is the last poem I will read, and it is a short poem looking at many worlds. The sorrow of starlings. This is what the artist sees. Starlings, golden beaks, blunt tails, nose, usurpers in the cold. There, another golden spot, out of it, cup and fall, hopes, daffodil. And the bird feeder swings, empty, each bought black squirrel guard on black shepherd's crook. Emergent tulip leaves greened among too many dun dark leaves, soil layered, dead and thick. The artist reads news, chaos. Unlike rusted spike, jagged shell, rough stone, spreading moss in her cracked garden trough, or like, knows. The artist censures it with her eyes, paints it in her head. The artist thinks it is an empty land until trees fill the space, birds the sky, knows no limits. Unless the artist, useless hands, watches starlings realize their wondrous name, flow or burn. Thank you.
That concludes the first part, or the main part, I should say, of the event, but we're not quite at the very end yet, because now we open it up to the audience and give everyone the chance to ask questions of our readers, to have them respond to each other if that's what you're interested in. Yeah, to find out about their experience with the Montreal Prize. Does anybody have any question to make the start? Feel free to raise your hands, use the raise your hand function or something. Vladislav, reliable.
May I speak?
Yes,
Am I heard?
please.
Am I allowed? Okay, thank you very much to all the readers. I have one common question to all of you, and you are welcome to answer in a way you would choose, because the question could be at the same time connected to the relation of the elements of composition within your poetry, and simultaneously the elements of prosody. So how do you define the inner relationship between composition and prosody within your poetic experience? So you can choose either to answer it in a general way, or to choose some elements and on their example to present your understanding of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vladislav. Who wants to
Thank
go
you.
first of our readers? We have volunteers. Wesley, do you want to make a start? We just go down the lineup.
I mean, I think I love that question, and the idea of thinking about rhythm in my, like, when I was first trying to prove something in writing my first book, I was like, oh, it's gonna be just percussive and all kinds of sound and texture. And I was like, how many forms can I jump around in? And I don't know, I was trying to prove something. And then with my new project, with my new manuscript, so much of the writing, the composing, and the idea of prosody became kind of an argument. And so a lot of my poems in the new book are either they're like tapping a toe against a sonnet. They're not really sonnets, but they kind of rely on the structure and play around with the lines. Probably not as well as like Diane Seuss does with her really wonderful sonnet book. But it's sort of like I'm like tapping a toe against sonnets, and then on the other side I'm like tapping a toe against the prose poem and trying to see how prosody gets kind of obliterated by writing the the prose poem. And so I don't know, I love lines and patterns and rhythms and syllabics and all of that. But I don't know, I think I've been trying to figure out what has to be there for poems to be poems. And so much of like the prose I've been reading lately, I've been realizing that one of my favorites, Kiese Lehman, like he's a poet, but he mostly writes prose and memoir and essay and stuff. But like he's a poet, and I don't know if he would agree with me, but I think I've figured out something apart from prosody that is in the poem. So that's kind of what I've been recently wondering about in my own work and just as a reader. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, Vladislav, but I appreciate your question.
Thank you so much. While listening to your poems, I had the impression that your prosody should be compared to your kids jumping on the table and screaming there. Should be more of that while reading, I believe, but it's just my impression. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Owen, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, what you were saying, Wesley, really chimes with, I think, how I think about it too, or about, I guess, what like role composition, how that happens with prose and how it happens with poetry. And like to me, with poetry, the way I kind of write from one line to another, it's less about like the snapping together of like logic or meaning sequentially and more about like what the sound of the sentence I've just written suggests the next sentence should be. And like I find often when I'm stuck in a poem, I'll like really just try to listen to the line that I have there as my most recent line, and like something in the sound of that then tells me like what even object or even what claim the poem has to make next, even if it's like not a claim I think the speaker necessarily would have made logically, but like the sounds are what help me arrive at that. So to me, sound is like a really helpful motor when I'm writing poems to kind of both get me unstuck as well as also like at its most organic to just be kind of the motor that gets me like from beginning to end of the writing process. But yeah, I don't know. That also, I've also like, as you were saying, Wesley, like have been trying or interested in poems that use diction that almost sounds like kind of prose-like, or that maybe minimizes a sort of like use of sound and rhythm, but that still somehow lifts up into poetry. And like that feels like a more challenging proposition, maybe, but also one I'm curious about, like how certain writers are able to make happen.
You're like mutually mirroring your own words while reproducing your poems. It's like a multidimensional mirroring. This is my impression of your creative work. Thank you so much.
I'll just jump in here really very quickly because I just find it interesting to think about and think about myself. I think I'm a little bit obsessed with Shakespeare and the incredible, I think, use of rhythm and beat, iambic pentameter within Shakespeare's words. But on the other hand, the words that he chooses, I think, are just become incredible, and they have so much meaning within that music, within those sounds. And when I write, it's not that I'm trying to write like Shakespeare, although a couple decades ago I did. But I am thinking about how the rhythm is working. I have done some work with prose poetry, but I really get back to free verse or even more formal poetry, often sonnets. Wesley was bringing up sonnets. And the beats, the rhythm within is quite important to me, as well as how the words work together from, words, even if it's, 5 lines down or 10 lines down, the sounds of those words are referring back to the words that I started with, and those words that are so important to get at what I'm trying to get at in the poem. So I just wanted to add a little bit there.
No, I believe this is not a little bit. This is very important. And as far as Shakespeare is concerned, it must not be obsession, it's love. I believe there is difference between love and obsession, which our age doesn't understand fully. And thank you very much. I believe that your attitude to what is the sense of prosody is very near to the sense of poetry itself. And I was personally stunned after hearing that you've been composing your collection of poetry for 10 years. I believe that poetry is a very big work. It's a long journey. It's a quest, a spiritual quest, which should not be taken as something for granted, like Shakespeare did, like Milton and all the great poets did. And I believe that your approach is very, very important to keep and to go on for this age and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vladislav. Eli,
Yes,
do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I do. I said I would speak the second time to close the call, but no, please let me ask a question. This is inspired by Vladislav's praise of Wesley's children. Um, quick anecdote. I was at a music recital recently, piano teacher's recital, a very small thing in her house, and young people were playing, and the old teacher was presiding over it all. And I really felt like Beethoven was with us in the room. Um, and so my question for the three of you is, who's in the room? Who's in the room for you? Sheryl said that spouse and sister and friend were all here today. And Owen, you conjured your friends for us beautifully. I fell in love with Ada, the painter. I now know Ada, the painter, thanks to your poem. But could we think a little bit about, yeah, untranslated Neruda and John Donne all the way to Wesley's hopping children. Wesley, I have been that dad with my kids hopping. The youngest is now 13, so I suppose those days are behind me, sadly. Who's in the room for you, um, in poetry?
Wesley, do you want to start?
Yeah. Sure. Thank you. I mean, obviously they're in the room, unavoidably now. I mean, especially with my manuscript, I guess we call these things. James Baldwin is certainly in the room. And I mean, that began 15 years ago. And so, I mean, the book itself is, I'm kind of on the same timetable as you, Sheryl. This second manuscript is also like a 10, 12 year thing in the process. I mean, who else is in the room? For the poems right now, probably. I mean, I think the other thing aside from Baldwin is that the manuscript wanted is really it's jumping between Baldwin and other close relationships, and so I think it's that cluster of people. There's the sort of the beloved, so my spouse, but then also several dear friends who happen also to be poets, and they're mostly in the room as friends, less so as poets. So I think that's it. That's what I got for now.
Awesome, thank you. Should we switch up the order, or do you want to go, Owen?
Sure, I'll go. We'll switch up. Sorry, Owen. You want to jump in? Because I was just thinking about this and because Wesley brought this up again, this book I've been working on for 10 years and done many other things. They're animals that I envisioned on the ark or not on the ark, and quite honestly, they were in the room with me. Each one over the 10 years, and I did many others that aren't included in the manuscript, but nature is something that I'm very interested in anyway, but it usually takes the form of flora, as I worked for an arboretum for many, many years. So fauna was different, but each animal was with me. And the more I learned about these animals and, how important they are, it became this greater this greater need to write something quickly, but to get across something that was very important about them. I'm not trying to be the animal. I'm not trying to make the animals human or anything like that, but just seeing them for who they are. So that was that. But in any other poem, I think with me is me. I'm there. I'm there who I was when I was younger. By many years, who I am when I was bringing up my kids, who I am when I was being a daughter, who I am when I have been unhappy, or who I am when I've been glad. So I think so many things inform us, but that's who's in the room with me when I'm writing.
Yeah, I guess when
Thank you.
about like who's in the room, it also feels related to maybe a question of like audience or at least like addressee of like who the poems are going out to. And I don't know, I was thinking about this over the winter because I was writing like letters to some friends and I was realizing like the kind of language I was using in these like kind of really one-on-one correspondences was like super different than the kind of language I felt like would usually end up in my poems. And I became curious like what would it look like to write a poem that's like you think only one person will read versus like a poem that you think like a certain group of 10 people will read, or even like that you're saying to a crowd versus that you're like whispering to someone at a party. Like I just found this sense of like what is sort of the exact different scale or condition of a poem and who it's being said to. Like that's really changed, I guess, the language that comes out for me. And it's sort of nice to imagine that there are like these different poems that go out into the world that like, are really tied to being like the specific way that I talk to certain people or that preserve that kind of relationship, even if it's like a one-sided kind of monologue, that there's some kind of correspondence going on between the two of them.
So, on behalf of Martin and the whole prize committee here and all our student volunteers, I just want to say thank you once again to our wonderful readers. When next we meet, it will be to give people copies of the book. So stay tuned. Check your post office, check your post box, and buy the anthology to yeah to I guess join us in the room of that book. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for being here. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.